Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter's Stories. I don't even know how to start this. My heart is heavy because I miss you all so much. I wish I could sit here and read you the stories you love, the way only I can. But right now, I can't. And that hurts me more than you know. I know James Peter is trying. I see his efforts, and I appreciate him for stepping in. But I also know he's not me. He's not perfect. And I can feel it, the difference. Maybe you feel it too. Maybe it's not the same for you, and if that's the case, I need to hear it from you. My family, tell me the truth. Where is he falling short? What mistakes is he making? Your voices matter to me. I have the power to create a voice clone, to make stories sound just like me, but my heart won't let me do that to you. I can't betray you like that. You are my family, and I have always given you my raw, honest, and unfiltered self. If I can't be here for you the way I should, I would rather wait until I can return properly. Please pray for me. I promise you, with every fiber of my being, I will be back. I just need a little more time. I love you all so much.
Hi, beautiful family. I am James Peter. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories. I tried to satisfy everyone, but I know it's very difficult to replace Mr. Peter. I will step down soon because I don't want to damage Mr. Peter's reputation. God bless you, everyone. Let's begin with love. Rain poured down over Willowbrook as Nadia Rose gently draped a blanket around Miss Essie's frail shoulders. The elderly woman clutched Nadia's wrist. "The Lord sends angels when we need them most," Miss Essie murmured. "I'm no angel," Nadia replied, her smile illuminating her face. "Just keeping a promise to my grandmother." Outside the shelter's window, concealed by darkness, Robert Key stood motionless, the donation paperwork forgotten in his hand as he observed the scene. He hadn't planned to linger after dropping off the documents, yet something held him transfixed. Nadia moved with natural grace among the shelter residents, her deep mahogany skin glowing under the modest lighting. But it wasn't her beauty that held him rooted. It was the light emanating from her hands as she tended to those society had forgotten. "Nadia, you need to get home before this weather worsens," called Vivian, her friend who volunteered Thursday nights. "Just finishing. Mama's expecting me for late dinner. That woman works night shift, comes home to cook for you, and you're running around taking care of everybody else," Vivian chuckled. "The Rose women never knew how to take it easy." "Grandma Ida would haunt me if I started slacking now." Rob finally moved from his observation point, slipping into his car. The image of her hands, those beautiful hands that carried light itself, refused to fade from his mind. In his world of negotiations and calculated risks, such genuine compassion seemed more precious than any luxury. The next morning at Key Enterprises, Nadia arrived at 7:30, reviewing Mr. Patterson's schedule while confirming details for the afternoon's executive meeting. "Morning, Nadia," Darlene called from the adjacent desk. At 62, she served as unofficial matriarch of the executive floor. "You look tired, sugar. Late night at that shelter again. Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who's known you since you wore pigtails," Darlene replied. "Your mama called me last night worried sick. We had new people come in with the storm and you couldn't leave until everyone was settled," Darlene finished. "Just like your grandmother." "Speaking of fixing things," Darlene continued, lowering her voice, "the boss himself will be at the executive meeting today. Word is he's taking a more active role in the community development division." The elevator doors opened and Robert Key stepped onto the floor. Unlike his father, whose presence demanded attention, Rob moved with quiet authority. Tall and broad-shouldered, with skin the color of burnished copper and cropped hair showing distinguished gray at the temples. As he approached the executive station, Nadia felt an odd flutter of recognition. "Good morning," he said, his deep voice causing several heads to turn. "Miss Dash?" "Rose," she supplied. Nadia Rose, Mr. Patterson's executive assistant. Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps. "Ms. Rose," he repeated. "I believe you're involved with the Willowbrook Community Shelter?" Surprise registered on her face. "Yes, sir. My grandmother founded it, and I coordinate evening programs there." "Impressive commitment," he said, his expression softening slightly. "I'd be interested in hearing more about their needs. Perhaps you could prepare a brief overview for the Foundation Committee?" "Of course, Mr. Key." He nodded, then hesitated before adding, "Thank you, Ms. Rose," and continuing toward the executive suite. As he walked away, Nadia exchanged a bewildered glance with Darlene. "Well, well," Darlene whispered. "Seems the Ice Prince has thawed enough to notice something besides profit margins." "It's just business," Nadia countered, though she couldn't dismiss the strange electricity she'd felt. "The Foundation gives to dozens of community organizations." Later that afternoon, as the executive meeting concluded, Rob's voice stopped her as she turned to leave. "Ms. Rose?" "Yes, Mr. Key." "That report we discussed this morning on the shelter's needs. Would tomorrow be sufficient time to prepare it?" "Yes, of course." "Good. You can bring it directly to my office at 4. That evening at the shelter, her mind kept returning to the strange interactions with Robert Key. "You're a million miles away tonight," observed Loretta, another friend who volunteered after retiring from teaching. "Something happened at that fancy job of yours." Nadia hesitated, then shared the day's odd encounters. "Sounds like Mr. Moneybags might have noticed more than your professional qualifications." "Don't start," Nadia warned. "The man runs a billion-dollar company. He's not interested in an executive assistant who spends her evenings serving soup." "My 40 years of teaching taught me one thing. You can never judge what's in a person's heart by the size of their bank account. Don't dismiss a blessing just because it comes in unexpected packaging." Nadia shook her head, unwilling to admit even to herself that Robert Key's unexpected attention had awakened something long dormant. After David's betrayal 3 years ago, she'd focused entirely on work and the shelter, finding purpose in service rather than romance. As she drove home that night, she couldn't help wondering what tomorrow's meeting might bring. What she couldn't know was that, in his penthouse across town, Robert Key stood at his window, thinking of a woman whose hands carried light in a world that had long seemed very dark to him. Chapter 2. Shadows of the Past. The morning newspaper sat beside Robert Key's untouched breakfast, its headline announcing another expansion of Key Enterprises. Success upon success, building an empire beyond his father's original vision. Yet as he gazed at evidence of his professional triumphs, he felt nothing. He sipped black coffee as sunlight spilled across his penthouse dining room. The space projected tasteful affluence, mahogany furniture, contemporary art, panoramic city views. Perfect, polished, and utterly impersonal. Rob's thoughts drifted to his childhood home, equally impressive but similarly cold. Sterling Key had built Key Enterprises through relentless work and uncompromising standards, applying those same expectations to his only son. "Keys are not weaklings," his father would say. "Sentimentality is for those who lack the strength to succeed. Remember that." Sterling's philosophy had been carved into Robert's psyche. Emotions were distractions, attachments were vulnerabilities. And love, romantic love especially, was the ultimate weakness. After his mother left when he was 12, departing with barely a goodbye after years withering under Sterling's cold ambition, the lessons seemed confirmed. Today at 4 o'clock, Nadia Rose would come to his office. The prospect stirred something he hadn't felt in years, anticipation tinged with nervousness. Ridiculous, really. He negotiated 9-figure deals without breaking a sweat, yet the thought of an hour with this woman made his palms damp. What was it about her that had caught his attention so completely? In his world of calculated gestures, Nadia Rose moved with genuine purpose, her compassion unhesitatingly real. The image of her tenderly adjusting that blanket around the elderly woman's shoulders returned to his mind. When was the last time he had done anything without calculating its return on investment? Across town, Nadia hurried through her morning routine in the modest two-bedroom home she shared with her mother. The house, with its well-tended garden and front porch swing, sat in the historically black neighborhood of Willowbrook. "You're rushing this morning," observed Evelyn Rose, setting a plate of grits and eggs on the table. "Big day." "I have to prepare a report for Mr. Key himself." "The son or the father?" Evelyn asked. "The son, Robert." Evelyn murmured, the syllable conveying volumes of motherly concern. "It's about the shelter, Mama," Nadia clarified. "He wants information about what we need." "That's a change. Those big companies usually just write their tax-deductible checks and forget about the actual people." Evelyn studied her daughter over her coffee cup. "Just be careful, baby. Men with that kind of power sometimes think everything and everyone has a price." "Robert Key isn't interested in me, Mama. I'm just the messenger bringing information about a charity." "If you say so," Evelyn replied, unconvinced, "but I saw how you pressed that blouse twice. You don't do that for just any meeting." Nadia couldn't deny the flutter of anticipation. It had been long since any man had sparked such feelings, not since David had upended her world 3 years ago, leaving her for a colleague after 2 years together. His parting words still occasionally echoed. "You're amazing, Nadia, but I'm building a career here. I need someone who can focus on supporting that, not dividing her energy between a job and a bunch of homeless people." The casual cruelty of his dismissal of her life's work had hurt more than the betrayal itself. Since then, she'd focused on the shelter and her career, keeping romantic entanglements at bay. At precisely 3:55, Nadia made her way to the executive floor. Unlike the bustling lower levels, the 50th floor emanated quiet power. Plush carpeting muffled footsteps, original artwork adorned walls, and discreet lighting illuminated prestigious awards. The office beyond the mahogany doors was unexpectedly understated. Clean lines, functional furniture, and floor-to-ceiling windows created an atmosphere of purposeful elegance. Art adorned the walls, not abstract corporate pieces, but vivid paintings depicting urban landscapes and community scenes. Robert Key rose as she entered, his height and presence immediately commanding the space. "Ms. Rose," he greeted her, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming." His palm against hers was warm and dry, the handshake firm without being domineering. Something almost like electricity passed between them. "I've prepared the report you requested, Mr. Key," she said. "Please have a seat," he indicated a comfortable chair. "And call me Rob. Mr. Key makes me look around for my father." The small admission that Sterling Key still cast a shadow humanized him unexpectedly. Nadia sat, arranging her materials as Rob returned to his chair. "I understand your grandmother founded the shelter?" he asked. "Yes," Nadia confirmed. "Ida Rose started it 30 years ago in an abandoned storefront. She convinced the owner to donate it for a tax write-off, recruited volunteers from her church, and opened the doors 6 months later." "That's remarkable dedication," Rob said with genuine admiration. "And now you're continuing her legacy." As they discussed specific requirements, Nadia found herself puzzled by Robert Key's engaged interest. He asked insightful questions about service models, community engagement, and long-term sustainability, topics beyond typical corporate philanthropy. "You seem to know a lot about community service organizations," she observed. Before she could consider further, Rob moved to a side table where a carafe sat warming. "Coffee?" he offered, and then, in a moment of unexpected awkwardness, knocked the carafe against a cup, sending dark liquid splashing across the surface. "I'm sorry," he said. quickly grabbing napkins. Apparently, being CEO doesn't guarantee coordination. The small mishap and his self-deprecating response cracked the formal veneer between them. Nadia rose to help, their hands nearly touching as they mopped up coffee. "My grandmother would say spilled coffee is good luck," she offered with a smile. "Something about releasing the spirit of hospitality." "I could use some luck," he admitted, their eyes meeting briefly. "My father would disagree. He believed luck was an excuse made by people who failed to prepare adequately." They settled back into discussion, but something had shifted. The rigid formality had eased, allowing glimpses of the people behind their professional roles. As their meeting concluded, Rob walked her to the door. "This report is excellent, Nadia. I'd like to visit the shelter, see the operations firsthand. Would that be possible?" "Of course. We're open every evening from 5 to 9. "Tomorrow evening, then. Around 6. "That would be fine. I'll be there from 5 until closing." As Nadia rode the elevator down, she replayed the interaction. Robert Key had revealed himself more complex than his public persona suggested. Intelligent and thorough, yes, but also possessed of an awkward charm when his corporate mask slipped. The coffee spill, the momentary hesitations, the flashes of something almost vulnerable in his eyes, all suggested dimensions that intrigued her despite her determination to maintain professional distance. What she couldn't know was that as his office door closed, Rob moved to the window, watching the city below while his mind filled with her smile, the graceful movement of her hands as she spoke passionately about the shelter, and the unexpected connection he'd felt. For the first time in his adult life, Robert Key had met someone who made him question everything his father had taught him about keeping emotions firmly separated from life. Chapter 3. Small Gestures, Silent Love. "Miss Nadia, look what came today." 8-year-old Marcus tugged at her sleeve with excitement. New books, real new ones. Where yesterday there had been a meager collection of tattered children's books, now stood a bookshelf filled with pristine hardcovers, picture books for the younger children, chapter books for older ones, and several reference volumes. "Where did these come from?" Nadia asked Vivian, who was helping serve dinner. "Delivery came this morning," Vivian replied. "Anonymous donor, just like the new bedding last week and the winter coats before that. Someone's got this place on their blessing list." Nadia ran her fingers along the book's spines, puzzled. The shelter had always operated on community goodwill, donations of used items, volunteer time, and occasional small grants. But these recent gifts were different. Brand new, high-quality items arriving precisely when needed, yet with no name attached. "Whoever it is has good timing," she murmured. "I just mentioned to Mr. Patterson last week that our children's books were falling apart." Before Nadia could ponder further, the shelter's front door opened, and Robert Key stepped inside. He'd changed from his business suit into more casual attire, dark slacks and a navy sweater that softened his powerful presence without diminishing it. "Mr. Key, Rob, welcome to Willowbrook Community Shelter." "Thank you for having me," he replied, his voice carrying unexpected warmth. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all. We're just serving dinner. Would you like a tour first, or would you prefer to observe the evening routine?" "The routine, I think. I'd like to see how things actually function." Nadia led him to the serving line, where Vivian's eyebrows rose at their visitor's identity. "Mr. Key, this is Vivian Carter, owner of Sweet Blessings Bakery and our Thursday Night Salvation." Nadia introduced them. "Viv, Robert Key." "Well, well," Vivian replied, handing Rob an apron. "Since you're here, you might as well make yourself useful. You look like you can handle a serving spoon." What followed was a revelation. Robert Key, who commanded corporate boardrooms and directed international investments, served dinner to homeless families with attentive care. He learned residents' names, listened to their stories, and engaged with curious children. His initial reserve gradually melted, revealing a man capable of genuine connection when freed from his corporate role. Nadia overheard him speaking with Ms. Essie, the elderly woman from the night he first observed her through the window. "My grandson was smart like you," Ms. Essie was saying. "Worked his way up to manager at the bank before the cancer took him. 3 years gone now." "I'm very sorry for your loss," Rob replied, his attention fully present. "Don't be sorry, be grateful," Ms. Essie advised. "Every day above ground is a blessing, even the hard ones, especially the hard ones. That's when you find out what you're made of." "My father used to say something similar," Rob admitted, though his version was less about blessings and more about proving oneself. "Sounds like a hard man," Ms. Essie observed with the directness of age. "He is," Rob corrected himself, "but effective in his way." "Effective isn't the same as right," Ms. Essie stated with quiet certainty. "A hammer is effective at driving nails, but it'll shatter glass if that's what you're working with." The insight seemed to strike Rob deeply. He remained thoughtful as the evening progressed. "You're good with them," Nadia observed as Rob helped clear tables. "Most first-time visitors don't know how to interact naturally." "They're just people," he replied, then added with a self-deprecating smile, "Perhaps I'm more comfortable here because board members aren't scrutinizing my every decision." "Is that what it's like, being watched constantly?" Rob considered the question. "From the time I understood who my father was, I've been aware of expectations. His, the company's, society's. The key name opens doors, but it comes with significant weight." "That sounds lonely," Nadia said, the observation slipping out before she could censor it. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the shelter around them faded. Something passed between them, recognition perhaps of kindred spirits, despite their different circumstances. Later, as the evening wound down, Rob joined Nadia in the small office where she was updating intake records. "Nadia, the shelter needs more than just roof repairs and heating updates. The entire building requires structural work to continue serving effectively." His assessment, while accurate, stung slightly. "We do what we can with what we have." "I didn't mean it as criticism," he interrupted gently. "What you accomplish with limited resources is remarkable. I'm merely pointing out that you shouldn't have to work miracles every day just to keep doors open." She studied him, trying to discern his intentions. "What are you suggesting?" "I'd like the Key Foundation to fund a complete renovation. Not just repairs, but a proper redesign to meet current needs." The offer was so unexpected that Nadia could only stare. "That would be... I don't even know what that would cost." "Approximately 1.5 million based on my initial assessment. More if we include expanding into the vacant lot next door." The figure made her breath catch. "Why would you do that?" "The foundation typically spreads its giving across dozens of organizations." Rob's expression grew serious. "Because what happens here matters, not just to the people you serve, but to the community. True change happens person by person, family by family. I've spent years funding initiatives that look impressive on paper, but don't create real transformation. What you've built here does." "I'd need to discuss this with our board," she said finally. "This isn't a decision I can make alone." "Of course. I'll have my team draft a proposal. Would next Thursday work for a preliminary meeting?" "Thursday would be fine," she agreed, still processing the magnitude of his offer. As they walked to the shelter's entrance, a comfortable silence settled between them. "Your car service isn't here yet?" Nadia asked, not seeing an expected luxury vehicle. "I drove myself," Rob replied, indicating a surprisingly understated sedan. "Easier that way." "Thank you again for coming," she said, suddenly aware of standing alone with him in the quiet street. "And for the offer. It's extraordinary." "The extraordinary work is happening inside those walls," he responded, his voice low in the evening stillness. "I'm just fortunate to be in a position to support it." For a breath, they stood facing each other, something unspoken passing between them. Then Rob stepped back, creating professional distance once more. "Good night, Nadia. I'll see you next Thursday." She watched him drive away before turning back to the shelter. Only then did she remember the new books that had arrived that morning, and the bedding last week, and the winter coats before that. Each donation addressing specific needs she had mentioned in passing during meetings where Robert Key had been present. The anonymous donor, the perfectly timed gifts. Could it possibly have been him all along? Chapter 4. The Shelter's Salvation. The red notice taped to the shelter's door sent a chill through Nadia's body. "Violation of Building Code 27A," proclaimed the official header, followed by bureaucratic language that translated to one devastating message: without significant repairs, Willowbrook Community Shelter would be closed within 30 days. "They can't do this," Vivian said, reading over Nadia's shoulder. "Where are folks supposed to go?" Nadia read the notice a second time, searching for options. "We need to address structural issues, roof replacement, electrical system overhaul, fire safety upgrades, everything we've been patching together for years." Her eyes fell to the estimated cost. $200,000. Minimum. There was only one immediate possibility, and it made her stomach knot with conflicting emotions. Robert Key's renovation offer. Thursday's meeting was still a week away. By then, precious days of their timeline would be gone, and accepting his help would mean surrendering the shelter's independence, placing its future in corporate philanthropy that could vanish with the next quarterly report. Her grandmother's voice seemed to whisper, "Pride will feed no hungry bellies, child." That night after closing, Nadia sat alone in the shelter's small office, surrounded by the heart and history Ida Rose had built. With resigned determination, she reached for her phone. Robert Key answered on the second ring, his deep voice alert despite the late hour. "Nadia? Is everything all right?" The concern in his tone momentarily disarmed her. "I'm sorry to call so late. There's a situation at the shelter that can't wait until next week's meeting." As she explained the code violation and impending closure, Rob listened without interruption, asking clarifying questions only after she finished. "This actually simplifies things," he said finally. "Rather than a renovation, we're now discussing an emergency intervention to prevent service disruption. I can have a team assess the property tomorrow." That quickly? Nadia hadn't expected such immediate response. "Some advantages come with being the name on the building," he replied with rare humor. "Can you meet the assessment team at 9? The next morning, rather than the expected small assessment team, Nadia arrived to find the shelter surrounded by vehicles. Engineers examined the building's exterior, while others reviewed blueprints spread across folding tables. At the center stood Robert Key, dressed for hands-on work in khakis and a button-down shirt with rolled sleeves. "Good morning," he greeted her, pleasure evident at seeing her. "I hope you don't mind the full contingent. Time seemed essential." "This is thorough," she managed, overwhelmed by the scale of response. "When you mentioned the 30-day deadline, I realized a comprehensive approach would be necessary." He gestured toward a woman reviewing documents nearby. "This is Maya Patel, Key Foundation's Community Development Director. She'll coordinate everything." For the next hour, Nadia found herself included in professional consultations that would typically happen behind closed corporate doors. Both Rob and Maya sought her input on every aspect, from immediate safety measures to longer-term improvements. By noon, the assessment team had compiled their findings. The news was worse than the inspector's notice had suggested. Foundational issues threatened long-term stability, the electrical system was dangerously outdated, and the roof wouldn't survive another winter. "Bottom line," concluded the head engineer, This building needs more than repairs. It needs complete rehabilitation, possibly even partial reconstruction. Nadia's heart sank. And the cost? The engineer glanced at Rob before answering. Conservatively, $2.3 million for proper rehabilitation. More if you want to address functional limitations like the inadequate kitchen and bathroom facilities. I think we need to consider all options, Maya suggested gently, including relocation to a more suitable property. Relocation? Nadia echoed, the word tasting bitter. This building has been Willowbrook Community Shelter for 30 years. People know to come here when they have nowhere else to go. Before Nadia could respond, Rob intervened. Let's not make decisions today. We have inspectors' reports to review and community input to consider. He turned to Nadia. When is the next board meeting? Tomorrow evening, she answered. Would it help if I attended? Rob offered. I could explain the Foundation's interest in supporting whatever solution the community prefers. The next evening's board meeting filled the shelter's small conference room beyond capacity. Robert Key's arrival caused a stir. As the full extent of the shelter's structural problems became clear, Loretta voiced what everyone was thinking. What strings come attached to that kind of money, Mr. Key? The direct question created a charged silence. Nadia held her breath, hoping Rob wouldn't take offense at the implicit suspicion. Instead, he nodded as if the question were entirely reasonable. A fair concern, Ms. Harris. Corporate philanthropy often comes with conditions that prioritize donor visibility over community needs. He leaned forward slightly, addressing the entire room. The Key Foundation's approach is different. We seek community-led initiatives where our resources can amplify existing strength, rather than impose external solutions. Pretty words, observed Mr. Washington, an elderly resident and community historian. But we've heard such promises before. What happens when corporate priorities shift or the economy turns? Another valid concern, Rob acknowledged without defensiveness. The Foundation would establish an irrevocable trust specifically for this shelter's redevelopment and ongoing maintenance. Once committed, those funds cannot be redirected elsewhere, regardless of economic conditions or leadership changes at Key Enterprises. And what would the Foundation expect in return? Asked Reverend James. Naming rights? Board control? We would request a single seat on your board for community accountability, Rob replied. As for the name, that should remain Willowbrook Community Shelter, honoring Ida Rose's vision. Perhaps a small plaque acknowledging the Foundation's support, but nothing that overshadows the community's ownership of this space. Why? The question came from Loretta, her directness cutting through formalities. Why this level of commitment to our small shelter? What's your real interest here, Mr. Key? The room fell silent, all eyes on Rob. Nadia felt herself tense, unsure how he would respond to such a pointed question. Rob's gaze swept the room before settling on the wall of photographs documenting the shelter's history. My mother worked in a shelter much like this one before she married my father. When their marriage ended, she returned to that work, finding purpose there that wealth had never provided her. He paused, the personal revelation clearly costing him something. I was 12 when she left. My father ensured I had no contact with her afterward, considering her choice beneath the Key family's station. 3 years ago, I discovered she had passed away, having spent 2 decades serving communities like this one. I never had the chance to understand her choice or tell her I respected it. Rob's voice remained steady, though Nadia could see the emotion he controlled. Supporting genuine community transformation through shelters like this one honors her memory in a way nothing else could. The silence that followed held no suspicion, only recognition of authentic human connection transcending social and economic boundaries. Nadia found herself blinking back unexpected tears, moved by both his disclosure and its evident sincerity. Reverend James was the first to speak. Mr. Key, I believe we'd be honored to partner with the Foundation under the terms you've described. The board will need to vote formally, of course. Of course, Rob agreed. Take whatever time you need for proper consideration. As board members and community residents filtered out, many stopping to shake Rob's hand or express gratitude, Nadia observed a transformation in him as well. The reserved businessman who had first visited the shelter now connected easily with people across social boundaries. Once the room had emptied, Rob turned to find Nadia watching him. "What?" he asked, a rare note of self-consciousness in his voice. "You never mentioned your mother before," she said quietly. "It's not something I discuss." His expression softened, but it felt important that they understand this isn't just another tax write-off or publicity opportunity. "It clearly isn't," Nadia agreed. "Thank you for being willing to share something so personal." As they walked toward the parking area, a comfortable silence settled between them. "You know," Nadia said, turning to face him, "your mother would be incredibly proud of what you're doing here." Something vulnerable flickered across Rob's features before he replied, "I hope so." For a moment, they stood close enough that Nadia could detect the subtle spice of his cologne. The professional boundaries between them seemed suddenly fragile, insufficient to contain the connection building with each shared experience. "I should go," she said finally, though she made no move toward her car. "Yes," he agreed, equally motionless. Their eyes held, neither willing to break the moment, until the shelter's door opened and Vivian emerged. The interruption broke the spell, bringing them back to awareness of their surroundings. "Good night, Nadia," Rob said, stepping back with evident reluctance. "Thank you for trusting me enough to bring me into this." "Thank you for proving worthy of that trust," she replied simply. Chapter 5. Quiet moments, loud hearts. "You've invited him to Sunday dinner." Nadia stared at her mother in disbelief. "Why would you do that?" "Because it's time I met this man who's taking up so much space in your thoughts," Evelyn replied calmly, continuing to knead bread dough with practiced movements. "Besides, anyone investing millions in our community should know the people he's serving, not just their buildings." 2 weeks had passed since the board meeting where Robert Key had revealed his personal connection to shelter work. In that time, planning for Willowbrook Community Shelter's transformation had proceeded with remarkable efficiency. Temporary facilities had been secured in a nearby church hall. Engineers had finalized assessment reports, and preliminary designs incorporating community input were already taking shape. Throughout the process, Rob had maintained a careful balance, providing resources and expertise while ensuring community voices remained central in all decisions. His respectful approach had gradually won over even the most skeptical neighborhood elders. What hadn't changed was the quiet electricity that seemed to charge the air whenever he and Nadia occupied the same space. Professional focus kept their interactions appropriate, but neither could deny the current flowing beneath surface conversations. "Mama, he's my boss," Nadia protested weakly. "Several levels removed, but still my boss. Sunday dinner crosses professional boundaries." "Child, please." Evelyn shaped the dough into a perfect loaf with a few expert touches. "That man crossed professional boundaries the moment he started looking at you like you hang the moon. I'm not blind, and neither is anyone else who's seen you two together." Despite her protests, Nadia found herself oddly nervous as she dialed Rob's personal number, a privilege he'd extended during shelter planning. He answered on the second ring, his deep voice sending an involuntary warmth through her chest. "Nadia, hello. Is everything all right with the transition plans?" "Everything's fine," she assured him. "This is actually a personal call. My mother would like to invite you to Sunday dinner tomorrow. Nothing formal, just traditional Rose family hospitality." She hesitated before adding, "She's rather determined to meet you." The momentary silence on the line made her stomach tighten with regret. Of course, he would have other commitments, or perhaps simply no interest in a family dinner in their modest home. "I'd be honored," he said finally, genuine pleasure warming his voice. "What time and what can I bring?" Sunday afternoon arrived with perfect autumn splendor, crisp air, golden sunlight, and trees displaying their most brilliant colors. At precisely 3 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Rob stood on the porch holding a bouquet of fall flowers in rich jewel tones and a small box from Vivian's bakery. "I know she said not to bring anything," he admitted with a boyish grin, "but my mother taught me never to arrive at someone's home empty-handed, especially not when meeting the woman who raised someone as remarkable as you." Before Nadia could respond, Evelyn appeared behind her. "Well, don't keep the man standing on the porch," she chided gently. "Mr. Key, welcome to our home." "Mrs. Rose," Rob greeted her, extending the gifts. "Thank you for inviting me, and please call me Rob." "Then you must call me Evelyn," she replied, accepting the offerings with approval. "Come in. Dinner's almost ready, but first I want to show you something." Ignoring Nadia's questioning look, Evelyn led Rob to the living room wall adorned with family photographs. She pointed to one in particular, a faded color image of a striking woman with Nadia's eyes and her mother's determined expression. "This is Ida, my mother, Nadia's grandmother, the woman who started everything at Willowbrook Shelter." Rob studied the photograph with genuine interest. "She has remarkable eyes, the same intelligent passion I see in Nadia's." "Sharp eyes run in Rose women," Evelyn agreed. "They see straight through pretense to what matters." She gave Rob an evaluating look. "My mother would have liked you, I think, not for your money, that would have meant nothing to her, but for how you've chosen to use it." The simple approval clearly touched Rob. "That's a compliment I'll treasure, Evelyn." What followed was a revelation for Nadia. Robert Key, Billionaire CEO, followed her mother's cooking instructions with the same serious attention he gave to corporate acquisitions. He chopped vegetables precisely, stirred simmering pots as directed, and engaged Evelyn in genuine conversation about her nursing career and community involvement. Most surprising was his comfort in their modest home. Nothing in his demeanor suggested awareness of the vast gulf between this simple residence and his luxury penthouse. He moved through their space with natural ease, as if family dinners in well-loved homes were his usual Sunday routine. During the meal, Rob shared stories of his early years before his father's success transformed their lives. "We lived in an apartment not unlike this neighborhood until I was 8, he revealed. "My mother insisted on staying connected to the community even as my father's business grew. She'd take me to the local shelter on Saturdays to help serve lunch. I remember being confused about why some people didn't have homes, and her explanation stayed with me. Houses are built with money, Robert, but homes are built with love. Some people have houses without homes, others have homes without houses, and the truly blessed have both." "Wise woman," Evelyn commented. "What happened to her?" "Nadia mentioned you lost contact. My father didn't appreciate her community involvement once his business gained prominence. When I was 12, she left, chose service over status. He ensured I had no contact with her afterward, presenting it as her abandonment rather than his control. By the time I was old enough to search for her independently, she had passed away." "I'm sorry," Evelyn said with genuine sympathy, "for both your losses, your mother, and the years you might have shared." The simple acknowledgement of his pain seemed to touch something deep in Rob. For a moment, his carefully maintained composure wavered, revealing the wounded child beneath the successful man. "Thank you," he said finally. "I'm trying to honor her memory the best way I know how. By helping others build homes, not just houses," Nadia suggested softly. After dinner, Rob insisted on helping with dishes despite Evelyn's protests. As they worked side by side at the sink, Nadia washing while he dried, a comfortable domesticity settled between them. Their hands occasionally brushed during the passing of plates, each casual contact sending awareness shimmering through Nadia's body. "Your mother is extraordinary," Rob commented, voice low enough that Evelyn couldn't hear from the living room. "I see where you get your strength and compassion." "She likes you," Nadia replied, equally quiet. "That's not a small thing. She's been skeptical of my judgment in men since David." "David?" The question held no demand, merely interest. Nadia hesitated, then decided honesty served them best. "My ex. He decided that my commitment to the shelter demonstrated misplaced priorities for someone dating an ambitious attorney. Said he needed a partner focused on supporting his career, not dividing her energy between a job and homeless people." Anger flashed briefly in Rob's eyes. He was a fool. The simple statement, delivered with absolute conviction, warmed her more than elaborate compliments could have. Yes, he was. But the experience made me cautious. Rob's hand stilled on the plate he was drying. "I understand caution, Nadia. I've lived behind walls of my own making for most of my life." His voice dropped further. "But something about you makes me want to step beyond them, whatever the risk." As evening approached, Rob reluctantly prepared to leave, thanking Evelyn warmly for her hospitality. At the door, she surprised him with a brief hug. "Don't be a stranger, Rob. Sunday dinner happens every week." The invitation, simple yet profound, visibly moved him. "I'd like that very much." Nadia walked him to his car, autumn twilight painting the street in soft purple shadows. They moved slowly, neither eager to end their time together. "Thank you for today," Rob said as they reached his vehicle. "Your home is exactly that, a home filled with love. I haven't experienced that kind of warmth since my mother left." "You're welcome here any time," Nadia assured him, meaning it completely. They stood close, the evening air cool enough to justify the minimal distance between them. Rob's eyes held hers, searching for something. Permission, perhaps, or confirmation of what continued to build between them. "Nadia," he began, voice low and resonant in the gathering darkness. "I know our situations are complicated. Professional boundaries, different worlds, all valid concerns. But I can't pretend I don't feel this connection between us." "I feel it too," she admitted quietly. "I've tried not to, but it persists despite my best efforts." Relief softened his features. "Then I'm not imagining it." "No," she confirmed, "but feeling something doesn't automatically make acting on it wise. Wisdom sometimes requires seeing beyond conventional caution." Rob moved slightly closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Sometimes the greatest risk is refusing to risk at all." His hand rose slowly, giving her every opportunity to step back, to maintain the safe distance protecting both their hearts. When she remained still, he gently touched her cheek, fingers warm against her skin. "May I?" he whispered, gaze dropping briefly to her lips. Her answer came not in words, but in the slight tilt of her face toward his, permission granted in the closing of that final distance. Rob's lips met hers with gentle reverence, the kiss tender yet charged with significance beyond its physical expression. His hand cradled her face as if holding something infinitely precious, while hers found their way to his chest, feeling the strong heartbeat beneath expensive fabric. When they finally separated, both slightly breathless, the world seemed fundamentally changed, as if shifted onto a different axis. "I should go," Rob said reluctantly, though he made no move to increase the distance between them. "Before I forget all the reasons why this needs careful handling." Nadia nodded, equally reluctant yet aware of reality's persistent claims. "Yes, you should." His fingers traced her cheekbone once more before he finally stepped back. "Good night," Nadia rose. "Good night, Robert Key." As his car disappeared around the corner, Nadia remained on the sidewalk, fingertips touching her lips where the memory of his kiss lingered like a promise. When she finally turned toward the house, she found her mother watching from the porch, knowing smile playing at her lips. "Don't say it," Nadia warned, unable to suppress her own smile. "I don't need to, baby," Evelyn replied serenely. "Some things speak perfectly well for themselves." Chapter 6. The Dance of Souls. "A charity gala," Nadia repeated, scanning the formal invitation Rob had just handed her. Embossed gold lettering announced the annual Key Foundation Benefactors Ball. "These tickets cost $5,000 each. Why are you giving me one?" They stood in the shelter's temporary location at Willowbrook First Baptist Church. 2 months had passed since their first kiss, weeks filled with careful navigation of their evolving relationship alongside shelter reconstruction. "I'm not just giving you a ticket," Rob corrected with a smile. "I'm asking you to co-chair the event with me." Nadia's eyebrows rose. "Co-chair? Rob, I've never even attended something like this, let alone helped organize it." "Exactly why you'd be perfect," he insisted. "The Foundation Gala has become predictable, the same wealthy donors making the same tax-deductible contributions while congratulating themselves on their generosity." His expression grew earnest. "This year, with the spotlight on Willowbrook Shelter's transformation, we have an opportunity to change the narrative, to center the actual communities being served rather than the donors' self-satisfaction." Co-chairing the Foundation's signature event represented a public acknowledgement of both her professional value and their personal relationship. "I'd need to consult with community leaders first," she decided. "If I'm representing Willowbrook, I need their perspectives, not just mine." Rob's smile widened. "I'd expect nothing less. That's precisely why you're the right person for this." 2 weeks later, Nadia stood before the mirror in her bedroom, hardly recognizing her reflection. The gown, a creation by renowned black designer Marcus Garvey Williams, transformed her into someone both familiar and foreign to herself. Deep sapphire silk embraced her curves before cascading to the floor in elegant folds, the neckline modest yet flattering, the back featuring intricate beadwork that caught light with every movement. "You look like royalty," Evelyn declared from the doorway, pride illuminating her face. "Your grandmother's pearls are the perfect finishing touch." The drive to the Grand Meridian Hotel passed in comfortable conversation. The Foundation Gala represented more than a charity event. It would announce to Birmingham's elite that Robert Key had chosen a partner from outside their privileged circles. "Nervous?" Rob asked as they approached the hotel's grand entrance, where photographers and local media awaited arriving dignitaries. "A little," Nadia admitted. "This isn't exactly my usual Thursday night." His hand found hers, warm and reassuring. "You faced down city inspectors and negotiated with skeptical community elders. Birmingham's social elite should be easy by comparison." Inside the ballroom, transformation was evident. Traditional gala elements remained: crystal chandeliers, elegant floral arrangements, orchestral music. But interspersed throughout were powerful photographs documenting Willowbrook Shelter's impact, artistic contributions from community members, and information stations highlighting specific needs and successes. "This is remarkable," Nadia whispered, taking in the seamless integration of luxury and authenticity. "We created it," Rob said, pride evident in his voice. "Your vision shaped everything." They moved through the gathering crowd, Rob introducing Nadia to key donors and board members. Some greeted her with genuine warmth, others with thinly veiled assessment, but all registered the significance of her position at Robert Key's side. "Robert, darling," trilled an elegantly preserved woman dripping in diamonds, air kissing his cheek before turning curious eyes to Nadia. Aren't you going to introduce me to your charming companion? Of course, Elizabeth Winthrop, meet Nadia Rose, co-chair of tonight's gala and director of Willowbrook Community Shelter. Nadia, Elizabeth serves on our foundation board. How lovely to meet the woman who's captured our elusive bachelor's attention, Elizabeth purred, assessing Nadia with practiced eyes. Tell me, dear, how did you two connect? Through the foundation's community work? The question's subtle implication that their relationship must be professional rather than personal wasn't lost on Nadia. Before she could respond, Rob's arm slid around her waist in unmistakable possessiveness. Nadia has transformed how the foundation approaches community engagement, he replied smoothly. Her insights have proven invaluable professionally and personally. His emphasis on the final word left no ambiguity regarding their relationship's nature. The evening's formal program began with Rob welcoming guests before introducing Nadia as his co-chair. She stepped to the podium with natural grace, her voice clear and confident as she outlined the gala's focus on authentic community partnership. True philanthropy isn't about assuaging guilt or accumulating tax benefits, she stated, quiet conviction carrying her words to every corner of the ballroom. It's about recognizing our shared humanity and mutual responsibility. Tonight, we're privileged to hear directly from community members who've transformed charitable support into sustainable change. After dinner came dancing, the orchestra striking up elegant waltzes as couples moved on to the polished floor. Rob turned to Nadia, extending his hand formally. May I have this dance? The simple question carried weight beyond its traditional phrasing. This dance, in full view of Birmingham's most influential citizens, would publicly declare what had been developing privately between them. Nadia placed her hand in his without hesitation. You may. He led her onto the floor with confidence, one hand clasping hers while the other settled respectfully at her waist. As they began moving to the music, the room seemed to recede until only they existed. Everyone's watching, Nadia noted, though without concern. Let them, Rob replied simply. I've spent my entire life concerned with appearances and expectations. Tonight, only you matter. The orchestra flowed seamlessly into a slower melody, providing excuse for Rob to draw her closer. Nadia moved willingly into his embrace, her hand resting against his chest, where his heartbeat matched the strengthening rhythm of her own. I never expected you, she admitted quietly. In all my plans and careful decisions, there was no category for Robert Key. His smile held tender amusement. Nor was there space in my structured life for Nadia Rose. Yet here we are. As the music reached its crescendo, Rob's hand tightened slightly at her waist. I'm falling in love with you, Nadia, he said softly, the admission clearly costing him the control he'd maintained throughout his adult life. I've tried moderating it, rationalizing it, even occasionally fighting it, but the truth remains. You've awakened something I thought long buried under my father's lessons. I'm falling in love with you too, she whispered, the truth both frightening and liberating. It terrifies me sometimes, but not enough to stop. Joy transformed his features, making him appear younger, unburdened by the weight of Key Enterprises and his father's expectations. Before he could respond, the music ended, reality intruding on their private moment. Near evening's end, Nadia excused herself briefly, needing a moment of quiet amid the stimulation of the gala. Finding a secluded alcove near the ballroom's entrance, she took a deep breath, processing the evening's emotional developments. Voices from around the corner interrupted her solitude, two women speaking in hushed but carrying tones. I must say, Robert's charity project is certainly attractive, one commented with brittle amusement, though one wonders how long his fascination will last once the novelty wears off. Elizabeth thinks it's all about rebelling against Sterling, the second voice replied. You know how strained their relationship has been since Robert took control of the company. What better way to assert independence than parading around with someone so obviously unsuitable for a key? Their laughter faded as they moved away, unaware of Nadia standing frozen in the alcove, their casual cruelty landing with precision on her deepest insecurities. Was that how Birmingham's elite viewed her? As Rob's temporary charity project, a diversion before he settled down appropriately with someone from his own social circle? There you are. Rob's voice startled her from painful reflection. He stood at the alcove's entrance, concern evident in his expression. Is everything all right? You disappeared rather suddenly. Something in her voice or expression must have betrayed her distress. Rob moved closer, studying her face with the attentiveness that had first drawn her to him. What happened? And please don't say nothing. I've grown rather adept at reading your expressions. The genuine concern in his voice made deception impossible. I overheard some unflattering speculation about your intentions regarding our relationship, she admitted reluctantly. Understanding darkened his eyes. Ah, let me guess. I'm rebelling against my father, or perhaps slumming before eventually choosing a socially appropriate partner? The accuracy of his assessment confirmed her fears. Something like that. Rob sighed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair in a rare gesture of frustration. I wish I could say I'm surprised, but these people have limited imaginations. They can only interpret relationships through their own transactional lens. He moved closer, taking her hands in his. Nadia, look at me. Do I seem like a man engaging in temporary rebellion or social experimentation? Despite her momentary doubts, the truth was evident in his steady gaze. Rob had demonstrated his character consistently through actions rather than words, his genuine respect for her community, his willingness to learn from those society overlooked, his increasing vulnerability as their relationship deepened. No, she acknowledged softly. You don't. What I told you on that dance floor wasn't a passing sentiment, he continued, his voice low but intense. I am falling in love with you, with your compassion, your strength, your unwavering commitment to what matters. Not as some exotic alternative to women in my social circle, but as the extraordinary person you are. He lifted one hand to gently touch her cheek. But know this, I have never been more certain of anything than I am of us. Whatever challenges we face, and there will be many, we face them together. Chapter 7. Love's Protection. Nadia checked her watch as she locked the church hall's temporary shelter door. Nearly midnight, later than usual, but the new family that had arrived needed extra time to settle. Their story was painfully familiar. Eviction after the father's workplace injury, savings depleted by medical bills, pride preventing them from seeking help until they'd spent 3 nights in their car. The renovation of the original shelter building was progressing well, but would still take several more months to complete. Until then, the church basement served adequately, if not ideally. The parking lot was nearly empty, her car one of only 3 remaining. The night was clear but moonless, the church lot's single security light casting more shadows than illumination. Nadia pulled her jacket tighter against the autumn chill and began walking toward her vehicle. She heard the footsteps behind her too late. Before she could turn fully, a rough hand gripped her arm, spinning her around to face 2 men, their features obscured by pulled-down hoodies. "Wallet and phone," the taller one demanded, voice hard with desperate aggression. "Now." "I don't want trouble," Nadia replied, forcing calm into her voice despite her racing heart. "I'll give you what I have." She reached slowly toward her purse, mind racing through options. The church was locked, the closest houses too far for a shout to reach, and the temporary shelter's residents included children who might be endangered if she screamed for help. "Hurry up," the second man hissed, glancing nervously around the empty lot. "We ain't got all night." As Nadia fumbled with her purse strap, a car engine roared to life at the far end of the lot. Headlights suddenly blazed, momentarily blinding all three of them as the vehicle accelerated toward them with alarming speed. The would-be muggers cursed, releasing Nadia as they prepared to flee. Before they could move, the car skidded to a halt, and Robert Key erupted from the driver's side, his normally composed features transformed by cold fury. "Get away from her," he commanded, his voice carrying the absolute authority that commanded boardrooms and corporate empires. The taller assailant hesitated, clearly weighing the odds, his hand moving toward his waistband in silent threat. Rob's response was immediate and unexpected, with movements reflecting years of martial arts training, a detail he'd never mentioned to Nadia. He closed the distance between them with astonishing speed. In moments, the would-be mugger found himself face down on the asphalt, arm twisted behind his back at a painful angle, Rob's knee pressing firmly between his shoulder blades. The second man, evaluating his suddenly unfavorable circumstances, turned to run. Rob's voice stopped him cold. "Your friend's arm is approximately 3 seconds from breaking. Your choice whether you'd like to join him or simply leave while you still can." The threat, delivered with icy precision, achieved its intended effect. The second man disappeared into the darkness beyond the parking lot, abandoning his companion without hesitation. "Nadia," Rob said, his voice shifting instantly from threatening to concerned. "Call the police. My phone's in the car." Later, after police had taken statements and departed with the handcuffed assailant, Rob insisted on driving Nadia home. They sat in her driveway, engine idling, neither immediately moving to end the evening. "You have training," Nadia observed. "That wasn't just adrenaline back there." Rob nodded, somewhat reluctantly. 15 years of judo and aikido," my father insisted. "One of his better parenting decisions, I suppose." "Thank you," she said simply, "for being there, for responding without hesitation." He turned toward her, reaching to take her hand. "When I pulled into that lot and saw them threatening you." He paused, uncharacteristic emotion tightening his voice. "I've never felt that kind of fear before, or that kind of rage." "Would you come inside?" Nadia asked quietly. "I don't think either of us should be alone right now." In her small kitchen, Nadia's hands still shook slightly as she prepared tea. Rob noticed immediately, gently taking the kettle from her grasp. "Let me," he said, guiding her to a chair. "Where's Evelyn tonight?" "Night shift at the hospital." Nadia watched as Rob moved through her kitchen with surprising ease, locating cups and tea with minimal direction. "Rob, I keep thinking about what might have happened if you hadn't appeared." He set 2 steaming mugs on the table before taking the seat beside her. "But I did appear. You're safe." "Why were you really there?" she asked, intuiting something beyond his casual explanation. "The truth, please." Rob's shoulders dropped slightly as he abandoned pretense. "I've been having someone watch the shelter lot when you work late. A security professional, discreet, respectful of your privacy, but there if needed." Seeing her expression, he added quickly, "I know you value your independence. I wasn't trying to control or monitor you. I just couldn't bear the thought of you being vulnerable when I had the means to provide protection." Rather than the indignation he clearly expected, Nadia felt unexpected warmth at his admission. There was no possessiveness in his concern, only genuine care. "In any other circumstance, I might object," she acknowledged. "But tonight has reminded me that sometimes independence needs to make room for interdependence." Something shifted in Rob's expression. Relief, perhaps, but also deeper emotion. "Nadia, I need to tell you something. Something I've been feeling but haven't said directly." She waited, heart suddenly racing for entirely different reasons than earlier that evening. "I love you," he said simply, the declaration carrying the weight of absolute certainty. Not falling in love, as I said at the gala. Simply love, complete and certain. I love your strength, your compassion, the way you never settle for comfortable half measures when full commitment is possible. I love how you challenge me to be better, to reach beyond what's easy toward what matters. I love you too, she replied, voice steady despite the magnitude of the admission. Your integrity, your willingness to learn and grow, the gentleness beneath your strength. The way you see me, not just parts that are convenient or flattering, but all of me. Rob's hand found hers across the table, fingers intertwining with familiar rightness. For a moment, they simply sat in the quiet kitchen, allowing the shared declaration to settle between them, a foundation upon which everything else could now build. Then Rob stood, drawing her gently to her feet and into his embrace. His kiss held none of the hesitation of their earlier encounters. This was a man certain of his feelings and secure in their reciprocation. Nadia responded with equal certainty, her arms circling his neck as she pressed closer, savoring the solidity of him against her still trembling body. When they finally separated, Rob rested his forehead against hers. "I should go," he murmured, though his arms showed no inclination to release her. "It's late and you've had a frightening experience. You need rest." "I need you," Nadia countered softly. "Stay." The simple invitation held implications beyond the moment. Rob studied her face, ensuring this wasn't reaction to the night's trauma, but genuine desire. "Are you certain?" he asked, his respect for her evident even in this most intimate decision. "Completely," she confirmed. "I've never been more certain of anything." Later, as moonlight filtered through her bedroom curtains, Nadia lay with her head on Rob's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. Their lovemaking had revealed new dimensions of their connection, his unexpected tenderness, her surprising boldness, the perfect complementary nature of their desires. "What are you thinking?" he asked, fingers tracing lazy patterns along her bare shoulder. "That love finds us in unexpected moments," she replied. "Tonight began with fear and could have ended in tragedy. Instead, it brought clarity." "And tomorrow?" he prompted gently. "What does clarity suggest about our path forward?" Nadia shifted to look into his eyes, wanting him to see her complete conviction. "Tomorrow suggests we stop pretending this is temporary or cautious. We love each other. The complications, professional, social, practical, haven't disappeared, but they are obstacles to navigate, not reasons to hesitate." Rob's smile held profound contentment. "I've built my career on strategic patience, careful advancement toward distant goals. But with you, I find myself unwilling to move slowly. I want everything. Shared mornings, Sunday dinners with your mother, building the foundation together, creating a life that honors both our worlds." "Then that's what we'll do," Nadia declared simply. "One day at a time, but moving definitely forward, not circling in place." He gathered her closer, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Forward together," he agreed, "no matter what challenges come." Chapter 8. When Worlds Collide. The renovation site buzzed with activity as workers transformed the original shelter building into something far beyond Ida Rose's initial vision. The structure had been completely gutted, with new support beams, updated electrical systems, and expanded facilities taking shape under the watchful eyes of community-selected contractors. Nadia stood with Rob and Maya, reviewing blueprints spread across a makeshift table. 3 months had passed since the night of the attempted mugging. 3 months of deepening relationship, public acknowledgement of their romance, and growing integration of their previously separate worlds. "The community kitchen is twice the original size," Maya pointed out, indicating the expanded space on the plans. "And adding the second floor for transitional apartments means we can serve families through multiple stages of stabilization." "The rooftop garden was an inspired addition," Rob noted, squeezing Nadia's hand. Your grandmother would have loved that touch. Before Nadia could respond, a sleek black town car pulled up to the construction site, drawing curious glances from the workers. The driver emerged to open the rear door, and a distinguished older man stepped out, his bearing projecting authority despite his advancing years. Rob stiffened beside her, his relaxed demeanor instantly replaced by wary tension. "My father," he said quietly. "I wasn't aware he was in town." Sterling Key surveyed the construction site with critical assessment before focusing on their small group. His gaze lingered briefly on Rob and Nadia's linked hands before his expression settled into practiced neutrality. "Robert," he greeted his son with a nod that managed to convey both acknowledgement and mild disapproval. "I stopped by your office, but Janet informed me you were here." The slight pause communicated volumes about his opinion of the location. "Father," Rob replied, his voice revealing none of his evident tension. "This is unexpected. Allow me to introduce Nadia Rose, director of Willowbrook Community Shelter, and—" he hesitated only briefly. "My partner. Nadia, my father, Sterling Key." "Ms. Rose," he said, his handshake firm but brief. "I've heard your name mentioned increasingly often in recent months." "Mr. Key," Nadia replied, maintaining professional composure despite her natural inclination to challenge the coolness of his manner. "It's a pleasure to meet you. Your son has been instrumental in transforming our shelter." "So I've gathered," Sterling responded dryly. "Robert, might I have a moment of your time? Private business matters." Inside the site office, Rob faced his father across the cluttered desk, neither man seated. Their relationship had improved marginally since Rob had taken control of Key Enterprises 5 years earlier, but remained characterized more by mutual respect than genuine warmth. "Your sudden interest in community development seems to have expanded beyond professional boundaries," Sterling opened without preamble. "The board is talking, Robert." "The board approved the shelter project unanimously," Rob countered evenly. "The Foundation's work here has generated positive press and opened relationships with community partners previously beyond our reach." "I'm not referring to the Foundation's investments," Sterling clarified, his gaze sharp despite his 70 years. "I'm referring to your personal investment in Ms. Rose." Rob's expression hardened slightly. "My relationship with Nadia is personal, not business. It's not subject to board approval or your assessment." "Everything a Key does affects the company," Sterling stated, as if reciting an immutable law of nature. "Particularly when the Key in question is CEO. Your choice of companion reflects directly on the organization's values and standing." "If by that you mean Nadia's background doesn't include the right schools, family connections, or social pedigree, you're correct," Rob acknowledged coolly. "She brings something far more valuable: integrity, compassion, and genuine commitment to positive change." Sterling sighed, momentarily dropping his authoritarian stance. "Robert, I'm not questioning the woman's character. By all accounts, she's accomplished admirable work here, but there's a vast difference between professional respect and whatever this is developing into." "Love," Rob supplied simply. "This is developing into love, Father. Possibly the first genuine love I've experienced since Mother left." The mention of Rob's mother caused a flicker of discomfort across Sterling's composed features. "Your mother made her choices, as you are making yours. I merely suggest considering the broader implications. The Takahashi merger is approaching its final stages. Their corporate culture is exceedingly traditional regarding leadership and family structures. Your current relationship could potentially complicate matters." Rob's laugh held no humor. "How little has changed. You're still prioritizing business considerations over personal happiness, still believing connection and emotion are weaknesses rather than strengths." I'm prioritizing the company thousands of people depend upon for their livelihoods, Sterling corrected sharply. Something you seem to understand before this distraction. Nadia isn't a distraction, Rob stated with quiet intensity. She's become central to my life. If the board or our business partners can't respect that, perhaps they don't truly value the leadership I've provided. Sterling studied his son, recognizing the immovable resolve he himself had cultivated. You've always been stubborn, Robert, like your mother. He paused, then added with unexpected candor, I hope your choice brings you more happiness than hers brought her. With that ambiguous statement, neither blessing nor condemnation, Sterling departed, leaving Rob to process the unsettling encounter alone. Later that evening, as Nadia prepared dinner in her small kitchen, she sensed Rob's continued preoccupation with his father's visit. Though he'd shared the broad outlines of their conversation, something remained unspoken. There's more, isn't there? She prompted gently, setting aside the salad she was assembling. Something about your father's visit still bothering you. Rob looked up from the wine he'd been absently swirling in his glass. Sometimes I forget how well you read me, he said with a small smile. Yes, there's more. My father never makes purely social appearances. His visit had purpose beyond expressing disapproval of our relationship. Business then, Nadia guessed, taking the seat across from him. In part, the Takahashi merger I've been working toward for nearly 2 years is approaching finalization. It's significant, expanding our Asian market presence substantially while bringing innovative technology partnerships into the company. That sounds positive, Nadia observed. Why would that concern him or bring him here? Rob hesitated, clearly choosing his words carefully. The Takahashi family business is exceptionally traditional. Multiple generations of family leadership, strong emphasis on lineage and appropriate marriages. Father believes our relationship might complicate their perception of key enterprises' stability and values. Nadia absorbed this, understanding flowing beneath the tactful phrasing. He believes I'm unsuitable, that your choice of a partner from outside your social circle might jeopardize business relationships. His concern is what others might think, not his personal assessment, Rob clarified, though the distinction offered little comfort. But yes, essentially. Rather than the hurt or indignation Rob clearly expected, Nadia responded with calm consideration. Is he right? Could your relationship with me affect the merger? Rob reached across the table to take her hand. Even if it could, which I doubt, it wouldn't matter. I won't make my personal happiness contingent on business arrangements or others' outdated social prejudices. But this merger matters to you, Nadia persisted. You've worked toward it for years. You matter more, Rob stated simply. If forced to choose, there is no choice, Nadia. The following week, Nadia received an elegant invitation to lunch at the Capitol Club, Birmingham's most exclusive private dining establishment. The invitation came from Sterling Key personally, not his assistant or secretary, expressing his desire for better acquaintance with the woman who has so thoroughly captured my son's attention. After consulting with Rob, who seemed as surprised by the overture as she was, Nadia accepted. The resulting lunch appointment found her seated across from Sterling in a private dining alcove overlooking the city, feeling distinctly evaluated despite his impeccable courtesy. I appreciate your accepting my invitation, Miss Rose, Sterling began after their orders were placed. I realize my appearance at the construction site was perhaps less than welcoming. You were surprised, Nadia acknowledged diplomatically. As was I, though for different reasons. A hint of appreciation flickered in Sterling's eyes at her directness. Indeed, Robert has always been selective about his personal associations. Your presence represents a significant departure from his usual pattern. You mean I'm not from your social circle, Nadia translated calmly. Not the kind of woman you expected your son to choose. Directness clearly runs in Willowbrook families, Sterling observed with dry humor. Yes, you represent an unexpected choice, though perhaps I should have anticipated Robert's attraction to someone reminiscent of his mother. The comparison startled Nadia. Rob rarely speaks of his mother. He mentioned she worked with community organizations before she left. Catherine was... Sterling paused, something almost vulnerable briefly visible beneath his controlled exterior. Passionate about causes, committed to what she called real people's real problems. I found it admirable initially, then increasingly incompatible with the life we were building. You forced her to choose, Nadia surmised, intuiting the parallel he was drawing, between the work that mattered to her and the marriage to you. I asked her to prioritize appropriately, Sterling corrected, though without real conviction. The company was growing exponentially. Our social responsibilities were increasing. Her continued involvement with those communities became problematic. Those communities, Nadia repeated carefully. People without wealth or influence. People like those I serve at Willowbrook. Sterling met her gaze directly. Ms. Rose, I admire your work. Your grandmother built something meaningful, and you've expanded it admirably. My recent donation reflects genuine respect for those efforts. But, Nadia prompted, sensing the unspoken qualification. But Robert's position requires certain considerations beyond personal preference, certain responsibilities that transcend individual happiness. With respect, Mr. Key, that perspective cost you your marriage and your son's relationship with his mother. Are you truly suggesting he repeat your pattern? The blunt assessment landed visibly, causing Sterling to set down his fork with deliberate control. You don't mince words, do you? Not when they concern people I love, Nadia replied simply. Sterling studied her, reassessment evident in his expression. You genuinely love my son. Not his position or resources, but him. Yes, Nadia confirmed without hesitation. Though I understand why that might be difficult for you to accept, given your apparent view of relationships as strategic alliances rather than emotional connections. For a moment, genuine emotion cracked Sterling's composed facade. Catherine said something similar the day she left. He paused, then continued with unexpected candor. I've had 28 years to consider whether she was right. And your conclusion? Nadia asked quietly. Sterling didn't answer directly. Instead, he regarded her with new intensity. Robert is more like his mother than me, though he'd resist that comparison. He feels deeply beneath that controlled exterior. If you hurt him, if this is some temporary exploration of different worlds that ends when the novelty fades, the damage would be profound. Nadia recognized the statement for what it was. Not a threat, but a father's genuine concern, however awkwardly expressed. I have no intention of hurting your son, Mr. Key. I love him, not for what he has or what he can provide, but for who he is beneath the name and position. The man who serves dinner to homeless families with the same commitment he brings to corporate boardrooms. The man who honors his mother's memory by creating genuine positive change. Something shifted in Sterling's expression. Not quite approval, but perhaps its distant relative. You're unlike anyone Robert has brought into his life before. I'll take that as a compliment, Nadia replied with a small smile. As it was intended, Sterling acknowledged, surprising her further. Though significant challenges remain if this relationship continues to develop. Chapter 9. The Choice. The envelope arrived by courier on embossed Key Enterprises stationery, addressed to Nadia personally. Inside lay a check for $5 million made out to her, not to the shelter or foundation, along with a brief note in elegant handwriting. Ms. Rose, this represents my assessment of your potential contribution to my son's future happiness, should you choose to pursue it independently of him. No conditions attached beyond your immediate and permanent withdrawal from his life. Consider it an opportunity to expand your community work without the complications your relationship creates for his position and our family legacy. Sterling Key. Nadia stared at the check, equal parts astonished and insulted by its implication. $5 million, more money than she could earn in multiple lifetimes at her current salary. Enough to establish her own community foundation, support hundreds of families, create lasting change across Willowbrook and beyond. All it would cost was her heart. She was still staring at the offensive document when Vivian arrived for their weekly lunch date, immediately sensing her friend's distress. "What's wrong? Did something happen with the renovation?" Vivian asked, setting down the bakery box she'd brought. Wordlessly, Nadia handed over the letter and check. Vivian's eyes widened as she read, then narrowed dangerously. That manipulative old... She caught herself, taking a deep breath. "Please tell me you're not considering this." "Of course not," Nadia replied, finding her voice. "But it raises questions I can't ignore. If Rob's father believes our relationship damages the company, the family legacy, Rob's future, what if he's right?" Vivian set the offensive papers aside. Nadia rose. "I've known you since we were 5 years old, playing double dutch on your grandmother's porch. I've never known you to let someone else define your worth or dictate your choices. Why start now with some billionaire who thinks relationships can be bought and sold like companies?" "It's not about my worth," Nadia clarified. "It's about potential consequences for Rob. Sterling clearly believes our relationship threatens everything Rob has worked toward." "And what does Rob believe?" Vivian countered pragmatically. "Has he indicated any concern about your relationship damaging his professional standing?" "No," Nadia acknowledged. "He's been clear that he values our relationship above business considerations." "Then why are you giving Sterling's opinion more weight than Rob's?" Vivian asked, her directness cutting through Nadia's conflicted thoughts. "The man literally tried to buy you off. That doesn't suggest sound judgment about relationships." That evening, rather than sharing Sterling's offensive offer immediately, Nadia found herself studying Rob as they prepared dinner together in his penthouse kitchen. The past 5 months had transformed both their lives. His residence now containing touches of her presence, her small home occasionally hosting business associates alongside community friends. They had created something neither had experienced before, a partnership that honored both worlds rather than requiring either to abandon their authentic selves. "You're unusually quiet tonight," Rob observed, setting aside the wine he was uncorking. "Something on your mind?" Nadia hesitated, then asked the question that had been forming since receiving Sterling's check. "Do you ever regret the complications our relationship has created in your professional life?" Surprise registered on Rob's face before he moved closer, taking her hands in his. "Where is this coming from? Has something happened?" With reluctance, Nadia retrieved the envelope from her bag, handing it to Rob without comment. She watched as he read his father's note, his expression transforming from confusion to disbelief to cold anger. "When did this arrive?" he asked, voice dangerously controlled. "This morning," Nadia replied. "And before you react, I need you to understand. I'm not considering his offer, but I can't ignore the reality it represents either." "The reality of my father's manipulation and arrogance," Rob stated flatly, setting the envelope aside with evident distaste. "This changes nothing between us." "But it illuminates everything around us," Nadia countered gently. "Rob, your father wouldn't have made this offer if he didn't genuinely believe our relationship threatens something he considers essential to your future." Rob's expression softened as he recognized her genuine concern. "Nadia, my father sees relationships as strategic alliances. He evaluates everything through potential impact on the company and family legacy. His inability to understand what we've built together reflects his limitations, not ours." "I don't want to be the reason you lose anything important to you," she said softly. "I couldn't bear that burden." "The only thing I would lose without you is everything that truly matters," Rob responded, drawing her into his arms. "The company, the social position, the wealth. They're hollow achievements without someone to share them with who understands their true purpose." The following morning, Rob left early for what he described as necessary business, refusing to elaborate further. Nadia returned to her own home, needing space to think beyond the emotional intensity of their conversation. She had just settled at her kitchen table with coffee when her doorbell rang. Opening it revealed Sterling Key himself, impeccably dressed as always, but with an unusual tension visible beneath his composed exterior. "Miss Rose," he greeted her formally, "I believe we have matters to discuss. May I come in?" Against her better judgment, Nadia stepped aside to admit him. "If you've come to increase your offer, you're wasting your time." "I've come to apologize," Sterling stated, surprising her completely. "My approach was offensive and reductive. I underestimated both your character and your importance to my son." Nadia studied him skeptically. "What changed between yesterday and today?" "Robert came to see me this morning," Sterling admitted, accepting the seat Nadia indicated at her kitchen table, an unexpectedly humble setting for a man accustomed to corporate boardrooms. "Our conversation was illuminating." "Illuminating how?" Nadia pressed, unwilling to accept vague platitudes. Sterling regarded her thoughtfully. "In 30 years running key enterprises, I've faced countless adversaries across negotiation tables. None have matched the cold fury Robert displayed this morning." He paused, something like respect entering his expression. He made it abundantly clear that if forced to choose between the company and you, there would be no hesitation. He would walk away from everything I've built rather than compromise your place in his life. The revelation stunned Nadia. Rob had always assured her of his commitment, but the prospect of him actually abandoning his professional legacy seemed unimaginable. "I don't want that," she said quietly. "I've never wanted him to choose between his life's work and me." "Which is precisely why he would choose you," Sterling observed with unexpected insight. "You value what matters to him beyond what benefits you personally." An uncomfortable silence settled between them before Sterling continued. "Ms. Rose, Nadia, I made similar demands of Catherine years ago. Forced an unnecessary choice between the work that gave her purpose and our marriage. I've lived with the consequences of that arrogance for 28 years. His voice held uncharacteristic emotion. "I don't wish the same regrets for my son." "What are you saying?" Nadia asked cautiously. "I'm saying I was wrong," Sterling acknowledged, the admission clearly costing him considerable pride. "About you, about what Robert needs, about my right to intervene in his personal happiness." He reached into his jacket pocket, extracting an envelope. "This belongs to you." Nadia opened it to find the check she had returned to Rob the previous evening, now torn in half. "I had many reservations about the wisdom of Robert's choices," Sterling continued. "Personal and professional concerns that seemed entirely reasonable from my perspective. But watching him this morning, seeing his absolute certainty, forced me to confront a difficult truth. In protecting what I believed best for him, I was repeating my greatest mistake." "I don't know what to say," Nadia admitted, still processing this unexpected reversal. "No response is required," Sterling assured her. "I merely wish to withdraw my inappropriate interference and express hope that you might eventually overlook this regrettable lapse in judgment." He rose to leave, then added with surprising humility, "Catherine would have adored you, you know. She always valued authenticity above social conformity." As twilight painted the sky in shades of amber and rose, Nadia arrived at the construction site to find it transformed. The usually busy area was eerily quiet, construction equipment silent, workers absent. Strings of soft lights had been hung around the garden area, the only portion of the project nearing completion, featuring plants and design elements Nadia had selected to honor her grandmother's love of growing things. Rob stood waiting in the center of this illuminated space, more casually dressed than usual in dark slacks and a simple shirt, his expression a mixture of nervousness and absolute determination. "What's happening?" Nadia asked as she approached, sensing the moment's significance without understanding its specific purpose. "I needed the right place for this conversation," Rob explained, taking her hands in his. "This garden represents so much of what brought us together, your grandmother's legacy, the community's future, our shared vision of what's possible when people care enough to create change." With a deep breath that suggested gathering courage, Rob released her hands only to lower himself to one knee on the garden path. From his pocket, he withdrew a small velvet box that caught the glow from the surrounding lights. "Nadia Rose," he began, voice steady despite the vulnerability evident in his eyes. "You came into my life unexpectedly, challenging everything I thought I understood about purpose and connection. You showed me that true strength comes not from control, but from courage, the courage to care deeply, to commit fully, to risk heartbreak for the possibility of genuine joy." He opened the box to reveal a ring both elegant and understated. A deep blue sapphire surrounded by smaller diamonds, set in platinum that gleamed in the soft light. "I love you with a completeness I never imagined possible," Rob continued, the corporate executive's usual composed control entirely absent, replaced by authentic emotion. "I love your fierce compassion, your unwavering integrity, your ability to see beyond surface circumstances to what truly matters. I want to build a life with you that honors both our worlds, not compromising either, but creating something stronger together than either could be alone." Tears filled Nadia's eyes as she recognized both the moment's perfection and the journey that had brought them here. From their first tentative meeting to this garden built on shared vision and mutual respect. "Nadia Rose," Rob asked, his voice catching slightly on her name, "will you marry me? Will you partner with me in all things, family, community, purpose, for all the days we're granted together?" In that suspended moment, Nadia saw their potential future with sudden clarity. Not a fairy tale of rescued princess or social climbing, but a partnership of equals bringing different strengths to shared purpose. The differences in their backgrounds and experiences weren't obstacles to overcome, but complementary perspectives creating something greater than either alone could achieve. "Yes," she answered, her voice clear despite her tears. "Yes, I will marry you, Robert Key." Relief and joy transformed his features as he rose to slide the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, like their hands when intertwined, like their hearts despite their different worlds, like their shared vision despite their distinct paths to it. Chapter 10. Love's Fortune. Golden September light spilled through stained glass windows, illuminating the sanctuary of Willowbrook First Baptist Church with jewel-toned radiance. Pews filled with an unprecedented mixture of Birmingham society, corporate executives in bespoke suits seated alongside shelter residents in their Sunday best, community elders beside international business partners, representatives from worlds that rarely intersected, now united to witness the union of two people who had bridged these separate spheres. In the small antechamber serving as bridal preparation room, Nadia stood before a full-length mirror, hardly recognizing her reflection. Her wedding gown, a masterpiece of elegant simplicity by renowned designer Justina Miller, embraced her curves before flowing gracefully to the floor, its bodice adorned with delicate beadwork reminiscent of her grandmother's favorite garden flowers. Around her neck hung Ida Rose's pearls, connecting 3 generations of Rose women on this momentous day. "You look like something from a dream," Evelyn declared, tears glistening in her eyes as she adjusted her daughter's veil. Your grandmother would be so proud." "I wish she could be here," Nadia admitted softly. "She would have had strong opinions about everything." "Child, that woman is definitely here," Evelyn assured her with absolute conviction, "probably telling the angels how to rearrange the heavenly furniture for a better view." As traditional organ music filled the sanctuary, Nadia took her position on Reverend James's arm, the elderly minister having offered to escort her in place of the father she'd never known. The doors opened, revealing the gathered assemblage rising in her honor, faces turned expectantly toward the bride. Yet Nadia saw only one person, Rob, standing tall beside his best man Marcus, watching her approach with an expression of such profound love and wonder that the rest of the world momentarily ceased to exist. Their vows, written personally rather than borrowed from tradition, spoke of partnership across differences, strength found in complementary perspectives, and commitment transcending social expectations. When Rob slid the wedding band alongside her engagement ring, his hands trembled slightly, the usually composed CEO overcome by the moment's significance. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Reverend James declared, his resonant voice carrying to the farthest corners of the sanctuary. "What God has joined together, let no one separate." Their first kiss as married couple drew appreciative applause from even the most reserved guests. As they turned to face their assembled witnesses, Nadia caught sight of Sterling Key in the front row, seated beside Evelyn, his usual austere expression softened by something approaching contentment. The reception transformed Willowbrook Community Center into a venue rivaling Birmingham's finest hotels. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings usually adorned with children's artwork, elegant floral arrangements graced tables where community meals were typically served, and a string quartet played where amateur talent shows normally entertained neighborhood families. Yet, true to both Nadia and Rob's vision, the celebration balanced luxury with authenticity. Food came from local Black-owned caterers rather than corporate chains. Centerpieces featured flowers grown in community gardens, and the photography team included professionals mentoring shelter youth interested in creative careers. During their first dance as husband and wife, Rob held Nadia close, whispering against her ear, "Happy, Mrs. Key?" "Deliriously," she confirmed, leaning back slightly to meet his gaze. "Though I'm still getting used to the name change. Nadia Rose Key sounds like someone who should be making important decisions." "You are someone who makes important decisions," he reminded her with a smile, starting with agreeing to marry a man who never imagined finding this kind of happiness. Nadia observed with satisfaction the mingling of their previously separate worlds. Her mother deep in conversation with one of Rob's board members about healthcare access, Vivian exchanging recipes with the wife of a Japanese business partner, shelter residents sharing stories with corporate executives who had previously encountered poverty only through charitable statistics. "Your vision is already bearing fruit," Sterling observed, approaching Nadia during a brief moment alone. "These connections would never have happened without your influence, nor without Rob's willingness to challenge traditional boundaries," Nadia countered graciously. "We're building bridges together, not alone." Sterling nodded thoughtfully. Catherine would have loved this, seeing genuine community rather than strategic alliances. His admission held none of the resentment that might once have accompanied such a reference. "You've given my son what I couldn't, permission to be fully himself beyond the key name and expectations." On their final night in Italy, as Mediterranean stars sparkled above their terrace, Rob presented Nadia with an unexpected gift, leather-bound architectural plans for the Rose Key Community Foundation headquarters. "What is this?" she asked, studying the detailed renderings with growing excitement. "Our next chapter," Rob explained, pointing out features on each page. "A comprehensive community resource center incorporating everything you've dreamed of. Shelter services, education facilities, career development, healthcare access, cultural programs. This is extraordinary, Nadia breathed, recognizing her vision expanded beyond what she'd imagined possible. But the scale, the resources required, already secured, Rob assured her. Half from Key Enterprises Foundation, half from private donors I've been quietly cultivating. The board unanimously approved establishing a separate foundation with independent funding that can't be redirected or reduced by future corporate leadership. You've been planning this for months, Nadia realized, noting the detailed development already evident in the designs. Since before we were engaged, Rob confirmed. I wanted to create something that would outlast us both, a legacy reflecting our shared values rather than just the key name or resources. 5 years later, Nadia stood on the rooftop garden of the Rose Key Community Foundation, watching her husband kneel beside their son, Jacob Sterling Key. At 4 years old, Jacob already displayed his mother's compassionate instincts and his father's determined focus, currently directed toward the butterfly garden they were planting together. Gently, Jake, Rob instructed, guiding small hands as they patted soil around delicate seedlings. Living things need gentle care to grow strong. Like people, Jacob asked with the perceptive clarity of childhood. Exactly like people, Rob confirmed, pride evident in his glance toward Nadia. That's what Mommy and Daddy try to do here every day, help people grow stronger through gentle care. Nearby, 2-year-old Maya Rosekey toddled after a colorful butterfly, her delighted laughter carrying on the summer breeze. Named for her grandmother, Ida's signature flower, and possessing Evelyn's determined spirit, Maya embodied the legacy of strong Rose women while adding her own unique light to the world. The foundation had exceeded even their ambitious vision, becoming a model for comprehensive community development replicated in cities across the country. Sterling, to everyone's surprise, had become one of its most dedicated advocates, serving on the board and leveraging his considerable influence to secure resources and partnerships beyond their initial projections. The original shelter building now formed just one component of an integrated campus, serving thousands annually through multiple programs. More importantly, community members held leadership positions throughout the organization, ensuring decisions reflected genuine needs rather than external assumptions. As Rob rose to embrace her, his arms as secure and comforting as the day they'd first declared their love, Nadia reflected on the extraordinary journey their partnership had traversed. From cautious professional interactions to deep personal connection, from navigating family disapproval to creating their own unique legacy, from questioning the viability of their differences to celebrating the strength those very differences provided. "What are you thinking?" Rob asked, recognizing her contemplative expression. "That love truly is the greatest fortune," Nadia replied, watching their children absorbed in garden exploration. "Not measured in dollars or properties, but in lives transformed, including our own." Rob's kiss held the same tender reverence as their first, yet deepened by years of shared purpose and mutual growth. "A fortune that only increases in value with each passing day," he murmured against her lips. Some might call their story unlikely, the community organizer and the corporate CEO, building a bridge between worlds often separated by wealth, power, and social expectation. Yet standing in their garden, surrounded by the living proof of what love could accomplish, Nadia knew they had discovered a profound truth. Genuine connection transcends artificial boundaries, creating something far more valuable than either world could produce alone. A love beyond fortune indeed, yet in its own way the greatest fortune of all.